In this episode of Reinventing Your Home, we're going to take a bunch of expensive English oak and turn it into an internal door at absolutely no profit. Stay tuned to find out why. Let's start with a problem first. So for this particular job I had to replace a couple of internal doors, and we were originally thinking of using oak veneer. Now, these are quite simple to get, you can just get them online and they're relatively cheap for what you get. However, as I was measuring the frames so I can put the order through, I realized one of the frames is substantially shorter than the other one, which was a problem. Now in the UK a standard height for a door is about 1.98 meters, or about 6.566 for those of you who have been to the moon. But the problematic door frame was about 13 centimeters shorter, or about 5 inches. This is another reason why you should be using the metric system, because it makes everything sounds bigger. Anyways, what that meant was that we can't just pick the door off the shelf, we have to have a bespoke made one. And my supplier does offer that option where you can have a made to measure door. And that's what we were thinking to do originally. However, as soon as I put an order through it, I realized you have to wait over 6 months to be delivered. So that wasn't an option. I wasn't going to make my client wait that long. So I've decided, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to make the door in the workshop myself, because it's something that I quite enjoy doing anyways. But for the time being, let's get on with the build, and I will let you know later in the video of the cost, how much money I've lost, and why I think losing money on a project every once in a while is not a bad business practice. As we're done milling our very expensive English oak, it's time to start working on the joinery. And the first thing that we do is we create a 12mm groove with a router. This is going to be for our middle panel. Because this is a shaker style door, we don't have a raised panel. Instead, we have a flat panel at 12mm thickness. And due to the said thickness, oak veneer was a better material choice. But more on that in a bit. For the time being, let's focus on creating the groove. When it comes to the grooves, proper labeling is a must, because we have several different components, some of which require groove on both sides, like the mullions and the middle rail. When it comes to the stiles and the top and bottom rail, we only have to do one side. So you have to label these things in advance as to not mess up any of the pieces. And then we can go ahead and start working on the tenons. The first thing I like to do here is cut my shoulder on one of my table saws, and then I move to the other one where I have this tenon cutting jig. Once it's all set up, it's quite easy, you can just run it and then remove that piece, pretty much leaving you with a finished tenon. Now I do like to leave them slightly fat and then come back and shave them down to size once the mortise has been cut. That way I can ensure I have a nice and tight joint. By the way, this is not what I'm doing here now. This is just a clean up with a chisel. Bits that the saw didn't get, I'm just cleaning it up before I offer the piece to the style, so I can mark the position for the mortise. Then once this is done, we can cut the mortise, and then we'll come back and clean up the tenon with a shoulder plane. And this is exactly what we're doing here. As you can see, once we offer the piece onto the style, we can mark the exact position where a mortise needs to be. And from then on, we can take the piece, put it on the vise, and then start working on the mortise. Now, this is a technique that I absolutely love when it comes to cutting mortises. And this is just using my plunge router. That allows me to do about 99% of the work. And then I'll just come back with a chisel and square the hole. Now, this is a lovely method of cutting mortises. Unfortunately, that doesn't work on all kinds of doors. Specifically, it doesn't work on doors that have molding. This one, as I said to you, it's a shaker style door, so it was absolutely perfect for that one. And that's the reason why I went with that technique. It's very quick and efficient. It removes about 99% of the material, and then all you have to do is come back with a chisel, as you can see me here, and just square the hole. Or you can round over the tenon, whichever you think it's easier. For me, squaring the hole is much easier. It takes a couple of minutes. And then we get to the next job, which is shaving the tenon down to size. We're using a shoulder plane. Technically, this isn't a shoulder plane. This is a number 78 rebate plane. However, once you remove the fence, you can use it as a shoulder plane. Do several passes with that, and then we have a perfect joint that fits absolutely spot on. As you can see, kind of difficult to take it out. Then on 4 of our tenons, we have to create a notch. And I'm talking about the top and bottom rail specifically, because these are at the end of our stiles. If we don't do that, we can blow out our mortises. So what we have to do is we just have to cut off a piece while leaving a little bit so it can go in the groove, and that is filled too. Now the size of that, it's kind of up to you. There's not really a science behind it, but you just have to cut off a little bit, and then you can line it up and mark the position. As you can see, we're leaving a little bit of meat on the stout so we don't blow out the mortise. I won't be showing you how to cut that mortise because it's exactly the same process as we did earlier. Instead, let's skip ahead in time to a point where we have all 10 mortise and tenon joints cut, all of our middle panels cut to size, and then we can assemble the door. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, the middle panels are 12mm thick. So I've decided to use oak veneer for that. I did consider using solid oak for that. However, once you plane the solid oak down to 12mm, there's a possibility that at some point that panel would crack, and when it cracks within the door frame, I have nothing to do but rebuild the door. On the other hand, the oak veneer, it's a very stable material and it matches the color very well, so it was a better choice in my opinion. I also went and consulted with my workshop neighbors who are also joiners. It's always nice to get a second opinion, and that's the same thing was said by them. Probably a good idea to use oak veneer on that one. Also, the other problem is I had 25mm thick stock. I don't have a bandsaw big enough so I can split it, which meant that I had to plane it down to size, and in that case meant half of the material would have been wasted, just turned into wood shavings and chucked on the bonfire. And on a material that expensive, I think not only it's wasteful, but it's a dumb idea. So that's the other reason why I thought oak veneer is a better choice for this particular job. Now, as I'm continuing with the assembly, let's talk about the numbers. Now, as you remember earlier, I did mention the fact that we had to wait 6 or 7 months to get the door delivered. I did not want to make my customer wait that long, so I was left with 2 options. I can either match the price or I can ask for more money. And even though I knew I was going to lose a little bit of money on that project, I went with the first one because these are some of my favorite customers, people who have done a lot of work over the years, people who have continuously recommended me to their friends. So further down the line, I know this is going to pay for itself. So in my humble opinion, I think sometimes even if you lose money on a project, it's not the end of the world, especially on one that it's quite enjoyable, and I did enjoy building this door. Now the last thing we do here is we trim the overhangs, and then we have to touch up the joints. I've spoken in previous videos that some of those joints don't come out perfect straight from the clamps, so I like to go ahead with my number 4 smoothing plane, just touch them up, and then it's a whole lot of sanding, which I won't be showing you. And this is the finished door. Now in terms of the numbers, had we gone with a made to measure oak veneer door, that would have costed £400, and I've matched the price, even though the materials for that one cost about £260, leaving with about £140 of gross profit, which over the 2 days of labor that it took me to build it, it's grossly insufficient. But once again, I'm not mad at that. I intentionally did that. However, feel free to let me know in the comments if you think I'm being an idiot, or whether you think it's a nice thing to do for your customers who have given you tens of thousands of pounds over the years. Thank you for watching to the end, and I will see you on the next one.